Every village has its idiot. Every town, its creep. In our town, his name was Hugo. Hugo is hard to describe. Hard to describe in that he's so disgusting, it's difficult to know where to begin. You smell him first. A veritable force field of BO. Bodily sweat so strong and pungent, it almost smells fermented. That's fermented, not demented. Body odor mixed with much more, than a whiff of flatulence. Feces? Physically, he's an extraordinary sight. A tall but enormously fat man with a round head shaped something like a basketball, but crowned with a brush cut of mousy gray hair. In fact, Hugo is so fat, and his flesh appears so soft and gelatinous, so pulpy, that you feel it should be possible to squish him, in spite of his immense size. And then there's his clothing. Scuffed black shoes, old black stretch pants, a dark green work shirt buttoned up to the neck, and an old gray windbreaker. I'm pretty sure he wore the same clothes every day, back in the days of my youth. And it looks like he's still wearing them, 30 years later. Back then, Podgyman was always around, at all hours of the day and night. I can remember looking out the window of our third-floor apartment and watching him walking up Kerr Street after midnight. Indeed, any time I got up in the night and looked out the window, I would see him shuffling along the pavement, mumbling to himself, or laughing. Most times, I'd see him at the rear of the plaza, across the street from our apartment building, going through the garbage cans. Some guys said he ate out of them. But whenever we were back there and saw him coming, we got the hell out of there. Interestingly enough, I grew up with some pretty tough guys, but no one ever threw stones or anything at Hugo. No one. Hugo lived in a shack at the top of Kerr Street, just past the train tracks. So one of the worst local dares, the ultimate local dare, was to sneak up to his saggy front porch after dark and knock on the door, and then book it the hell out of there. No way anyone would stick around and say hi. Hi, Hugo. Rumor had it the place was full of bodies, dead bodies of those who had disappeared. One midsummer night, when I was in high school, I was the guy who got dared. As you didn't approach the house directly, we, me and my witnesses, were sneaking through the nearby woods when we heard the sound of mumbling and falsetto, high-pitched giggling coming up from behind us. Someone whispered, "Hugo!" and we dived into the nearby bushes. We had been following a rutted trail which ran parallel to the train tracks and which led to Podgy's front door. And as we watched from the shadows, Hugo came down the path, and he appeared to be floating, a foot above the ground. And when he reached the spot where we were hiding, he stopped and said in his high falsetto, come out, wherever you are. Come out, wherever you are." He stood, or rather hovered, and waited. And It sure as hell felt like he could see us. Eventually he floated or glided away, but we didn't move for at least 20 minutes or dare light a cigarette, even though most of us were dying for a smoke. When we did leave, we moved out quickly, making as little noise as possible, and for once, we all went straight home. Could Podgyman fly? For many nights thereafter, I had strange dreams in which I saw Hugo floating down the street or even flying through the midnight sky. And then, one brilliantly moonlit night, I awoke to find Hugo staring in my bedroom window. 30 feet off the ground. For we lived on the 3rd floor. I pretended to be asleep, but skinned my eyes so I could watch him. If he could float 30 feet in the air, I was afraid he might be able to float through the window, float through the glass. Hugo hovered outside for what seemed like hours, his gross, corpulent body inflated like a balloon, chuckling and gently bumping against the glass, until he finally floated away. I went out of my way to avoid him after that, and a few years later, I left town to go to school and forgot all about Podgyman. But years later, I went home to visit my stepfather, who still lived in town, and at one of the local watering holes, I ran into Darren. I hadn't seen Darren in 15 years, and to tell the truth, I didn't recognize him. I don't know if you remember me, eh? I took a slug of my drink to cover my embarrassment and to figure out who he was. And then I took another as I tried to figure out what had happened to him. Darren had been one of those badass boys young women seem to love. Curly blonde hair, blue eyes, and a direct and saucy manner. Seeing he was such a babe magnet, I used to hang around him to see if I could get lucky by osmosis. But the man sitting across from me was bald, with a blotchy, unhealthy complexion and an emaciated body. He had a nervous, tentative manner and wouldn't make eye contact. But I could see those beautiful blue eyes were now bloodshot and yellow. After some evasive chit-chat, Darren said, "Guess you want to know what happened to me." I wasn't sure I did, but I answered, yeah. It was Podgy, was all he said. At first I didn't get it, and then it clicked. "You mean Podgyman?" I asked. And Darren shivered and nodded. "Is he still alive?" "Alive?" Darren yelped. "He hasn't aged a bit. He looks exactly the same as he did when we were in grade school. Same clothes, too. But then I don't think, fuck, I know, he ain't human." This is what happened. Darren had an 82 Trans Am and was parked with Madison in a clearing not far from Podgyman's shack. Things had apparently been progressing nicely in a totally natural way when Madison suddenly shrieked, "Somebody's looking at us!" Looking up from his current position, Darren could see Hugo's round balloon face staring at him, his thick, slobbery lips formed into a kiss. "Get away from here, you fucking weirdo," Darren screamed. And then Podgy enveloped the car. I swear to God, it was like he surrounded it with his flesh, like his big belly, like his body expanded into this wall of off-white flesh and completely swallowed the car, swallowed us, And the stench. I'd always known his body was soft and blubbery, soft as shit. But I didn't think it was elastic. It was like he was a fucking amoeba. I tried to put the car in drive, but it was dead, and then I tried to open the door, but it wouldn't budge. Maddie was out of her mind, and we were both throwing up, and I thought we were going to die, and what a shitty way to go. And then we were free, and all I could see was Hugo staring at us with that stupid shit-eating grin. I wanted to get out of the Trans Am and beat the crap out of him, but not after what he did. So I peeled out of there. I didn't even worry about putting my clothes on. They were all covered in puke anyways. I headed for the service road, where there would be less people around to see us, eh? But Podgyman followed us. Followed. By bouncing on his belly. He was blowing up like a fucking balloon, and he would fall on his belly, bounce in the air, laugh, come down, bounce again, and laugh. Fall, bounce, laugh, fall, bounce, laugh, fall, bounce, laugh. And he wasn't just following, he was gaining on us. I really put my foot down on the accelerator and lost control on that curve before you reached the fourth line. We ended up in the woods by the silo. The hood caved in by this huge tree. I couldn't tell the cops what had really happened. And I was convicted of dangerous driving causing bodily harm. Madison had to have plastic surgery and blamed me, even though she knew it wasn't my fault. As for me, I spent 6 months in hospital, and the doctors never really knew what was wrong. Some kind of blood poisoning, they said. Wonder how I came down with blood poisoning, eh? All I really know is that I've never been the same since. So what exactly is Hugo, eh? He ain't human. So what is he? After Darren left, one of the waitresses came over and asked me if I knew him, and if he'd been telling stories again. I pretended I didn't understand, and frankly, I didn't think Darren was telling stories, or even exaggerating. And the next day, I came face to face with Hugo. I had walked over to the plaza to get something from the drugstore, and there he was. And he looked the same as he did when I used to see him walking the streets or exploring garbage cans. The brush cut atop the basketball head was now gray, and he seemed even fatter. But the clothes were indeed the same, and the smell, God! Hugo called me by name in his high falsetto, adding, "Where have you been? I've been looking for you." I didn't like that and really didn't want to talk to him. In the end, I mumbled something about no longer living in town. Hugo gave me a wide, sardonic smile and told me he missed me. I sure didn't miss him. "I'll be seeing you," he crooned. "I'll be seeing you." And then he waddled off down an alley between two stores, walking slowly, but disappearing so fast it was like he was floating. For the rest of my visit, I made damn sure the drapes were closed at night, and I wore earbuds and listened to music so I wouldn't hear any strange sounds, or laughter, or mumbling outside in the dark. So who, or what, is Podgyman? I really don't think he's human. But from now on, Hugo, even if you really do miss me, let's not meet. If this is your first visit to my channel, my name is Warren, and I write and tell original ghost stories and original horror stories featuring cryptids such as the Night Floaters, werewolves, and black-eyed children. I hope you will consider subscribing. Till midnight. Cheers.